you could do the same sort of thing for just about every demographic and look at what their drivers are. Obviously my work there specifically was in the 20-somethings bracket. I think it would be a bit rich of me to try and do a different age group. But it's the same principles, is understanding your audience. The customer, I think, was Alex's word, wasn't it?
Do you think there's an opportunity for granting to juniors or to, it could be auspiced to a Landcare group or whatever other group, and to grant just the funds to younger groups that actually are encouraged to go to a call and work together? Could that be one way of getting a few?
So it looked quite
when we have grants for Landcare, available grants, I don't think Landcare does actually have grants for young people.
We used to have the Next Gen Farmers grants, which were DAF ones, and we've tapped into them a fair bit for our young farmers Kentucky tours and things like that, but they've just scrapped them, which is disappointing.
Quite a bit of the funding for capacity building in agriculture and land care and natural resource management has dramatically been reduced in the current budget environment. However, if you are looking at creating more local and regional pools of funding, that could be one area that receives a priority to provide funds for a particular age group to utilise it as they see fit rather than as we see fit. And certainly the ABC Rural Haywire program has followed that same model, and one of the ideas that's being promoted at the moment is about a bucket of money that young people can utilise for projects that they see as important and as a great mechanism to engage them in their own communities. So the principle's right, it's just finding the resources.
An Illawarra Youth Landcare group, the mobile Landcare group I spoke about, they've mentioned that they've had a lot of trouble with the traditional Landcare funding mechanisms because what they do is one-off. It doesn't have that long continuation, which is a pity. But there are other avenues outside of Landcare, like when I won the WA Youth Awards back then, they gave me opportunity to seek for some funding to do something specifically for young people in agriculture, which is we used to seed funding for some of our projects. So sometimes those things we just need to look outside that Landcare and ag realm.
Ella, I think I missed it. I mightn't have been the only one. Did you say that you met your husband through speed planting for singles?
No, I actually met him through the Young Farmers Kentucky tour.
Ah!
Yeah. As I said, I got a bit more out of that day than I expected. But I then became, when they launched Landcare for Singles nationally, they asked me to be the national media spokesperson in the launch for it as sort of living proof that you can find someone through Landcare. And my son, he was 16 months old or something at the time, 16 weeks, sorry. They interviewed him on the radio as part of it. He just sort of babbled, which I'm not sure if that just put people off more. Like, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it out of Landcare.
I might just add to that, because there are quite a few community groups that do this marriage brokering service, and it has been successful. It's tongue-in-cheek, but in reality it's about creating the platforms and the opportunities that Ella outlined in terms of the types of events and activities that allow people to connect, and they're connecting because they've got the same values. And I know when I was with the Birchup Cropping Group, we actually keep a tally of the number of marriages, relationships, short-term and long-term, and babies that result because there is an organisation that is creating the platforms and the reason to get together, and Young Farmer Tours are very successful models.
Alex, I was just wondering, I'm from a small community of around 300 people, and we worked out a while ago there was around 20 community groups in our little town. And have you got any tips for how you convince the various community groups to come together and, amalgamate somewhat?
Sometimes there's one-in-a-lifetime opportunities, so disaster events can actually be a catalyst for redesigning your social capital within a community. Other times, the Birchup Cropping Group merged with another farmer group, and it was not so much convincing, but recognising that there were some areas that we could strengthen by partnering and being really clear about what you were compromising or giving up and what you were gaining, because in any takeover bid at a corporate level and also at a community level, when you're talking about merging organisations, there are winners and losers, and it's being really explicit about what you might lose, but what you're going to gain. And given how busy everyone is on various committees, the time-saving element and providing one group but multiple benefits, and for the younger generation that's not having to attend a meeting, that time element's one of the biggest things that gets people thinking, and almost that disruptive thinking about, oh, hold on a minute, I didn't realise we were actually putting that amount of volunteer time into just keeping these organisations running.
Can you pass that right down to Peter?
Desiree Harker from, I'm not sure which hat to put on at the moment, but I'll just say Middle Valley Landcare Group. One of the things that I think Landcare needs to also tap into at the other extreme is, apart from the young people, interesting enough, as we came in this morning, a whole bunch of us mature women who have retired and who have had some pretty demanding careers, etc. And I'm sure there's a lot of men in this category too, but they don't seem to talk about it like us women. But we're all looking for something to sink our energies and our talents, and we've had amazing careers in all sorts of areas. So there's the other extreme. We haven't got one foot in the grave yet, and we're actually looking to actually find things to do with our time, and we now have time and we've got a lot of skills. So that's another area that community groups can tap into as well. So
that's that perfect link with, where us young people can use you guys as those career mentors and as those professional networks. We just need to facilitate that to happen, yeah.
Peter Silk from the Kiwa Group. We've got a very diverse group from Falls Creek to Barranduda with farming in between. One of the things, we've got a number of little schools, and if you've got the right personalities at those schools and you can get some of the Landcare people involved, it's amazing the outcomes you can have. And we had some great criticisms we thought was fantastic. We were teaching the kids about what birds and what trees they had, and they're going home and saying to their parents, oh, we need to plant some trees. And then we got the feedback from the parents, why are you telling my little Johnny and little Jewel to plant more trees? We don't want to plant more trees. But that certainly leaves that seed for the rest of their lives. And so it's the under grade sixes that really we have the best impact, and we know that they'll come back when they're in their 30s and 40s. So I think there's great hope for renewal. And it's also, the other thing is, we have a large number of urban Landcare groups within our catchment as well. And again, they don't want to come along to meetings, but putting up nesting boxes, and we're going to talk about nesting boxes a bit later on, and finding activities so that they can actually relate. We need the urban communities right through Australia to be involved, because that's where our funding, long-term funding and commitment comes from, is to make those urban communities aware of what Landcare and how they can be involved.
I was at with the under year sixes. I think it's really important, because you're right, they do plant a seed beautifully, those kids, is you've got to keep that memory going. We've got to have those other events, because by the time they're 30, they will have done 500 other things in their life as well. That's what we need to make sure, that we are still connecting them with them every now and again to keep that going through.
I think that goes through and reinforces the message of just how busy Australian society is. There are more not-for-profits per capita in Australia than any other country, because we create another community or not-for-profit group when we've got an issue to deal with, rather than looking at what organisations have the infrastructure and capacity to broaden out what they're focusing on. So that connection from the grade 6 right through to when they might be contributing experienced knowledge and expertise, such as our experienced women's group, is really vitally important. And recently the federal government, DAF, hosted a series of forums through Radio National and also social media with the hashtag #AgTalks. And it was all about engaging the consumer and the producer and attracting young people into agricultural and natural resource management, because they're ongoing challenges. It's about having enough people and having the right mix of people to address complexities and the challenges that are facing us. And Landcare was highlighted as something that 25 years ago did bridge a great divide between urban and rural, with the creation of Landcare between the National Farmers Federation and the Australian Conservation Foundation. And given now the huge debate around animal welfare and people's urban understanding of food systems, they're very sophisticated thinking, there's a huge amount of interest in food, and people are really passionate about what they put in their mouths. And we're not taking advantage of that interest that's being generated to connect with what we're actually doing in the food production landscape, or food and fibre production landscape. And I believe that Landcare, there is a unique role there, an opportunity for Landcare to pop its head up above the parapet and above everybody else and say, we're going to do what we did 25 years ago and connect rural and urban around food and fibre production in Australia. Another challenge.
Just on the urban link one, many large employers, and many of those of course are city-based or urban-based, schedule a day a year for volunteer by the employees. Is that an opportunity that could be used to get more urban people involved in Landcare by getting that one day a year on Landcare projects?
If you are within an hour or two of a major capital city or a major regional centre with a corporate that's doing that, it's a fantastic opportunity, because you'll get a plethora of people inundate you. It's almost like a disaster situation where you get all these experts fly in, push the locals out of the way, we'll do it, and then we're off, which provides an opportunity to really engage, give that one-off experience. If you live beyond 2 hours away from that corporate physical location, we're disadvantaged. So most rural and remote communities are struggling to access the physical corporate volunteer. What a number of corporates are doing, and FRRR is working with a number of corporates around skilled volunteering. So like with women in our communities who have had a wealth of experience and are wanting to put back, some organisations and corporates, because they find it really hard to suddenly lose the workforce for a day, particularly if there's a business cycle that needs some continuity, they are structuring it so that the equivalent of a day can be given by a skilled volunteer at their desk to contribute to a business plan or a marketing plan. Origin Corporate is actually hooking up some of their staff to do online mentoring of Smith family kids. Now, it's all obviously managed well in terms of connection, but they're providing expertise, mentoring and technical and professional skills to communities across Australia regardless of their physical location. And that way you can hook them into different elements of Landcare, maybe not the on-ground works if you're geographically isolated from those centres, but it is an opportunity.
I can definitely relate to a lot of things that Ella has said. I'm not far off the Gen Y, I'm just at the end of Gen X at 34 years old. I've been involved with Landcare and different community organisations over the last 2 to 3 years since I started studying conservation land management, which I'm just about to finish. And I... I do. And I'm really excited to hear about Landcare looking at connecting and engaging with people in my age demographic, because I am guaranteed always the youngest person here, or at anything I go to, apart from maybe some primary school kids. But yeah, so it's looking good for Landcare. I think what you're talking about doing is definitely doable, and I think getting some more Gen Y, Gen X people on board would be the way to go.
And it was actually that observation about you're always the youngest one there that started our Young Farmers Kentucky tours, and that was a few of us Landcare officers who were in our early 20s at the time. We'd get to field days and go, everyone here's our dad's or our granddad's age.
Well,
we know there's young farmers that are our age because they're our mates, but why aren't they here?
Yeah.
And that's why we actually did those Kentucky tours. It was specifically was because that gap was missing. We said, well, where are they getting their professional networks from and their technical networks, and going to these field days, which is where a lot of that research and trials are represented and everything on farm. that's where that came from. Let's have a day that's for these blokes, not for dad and granddad, and keep dad and granddad away. Because, yeah, you're right, we're often the younger ones.
Yeah, it didn't discourage me being the youngest person at all these events and things that I go to, because I was looking for that mentoring and to learn from all these experienced people because I was studying, and yeah, so the old granddads are still very important.
They are, absolutely are.
So if you walk out of this event today without connecting with one of the groups in the room where you're creating an event that meets your demographic needs and the group is going to provide the organisational structure and support to do it, Tom is going to have to shout dinner. So we've got a relationship to create here.
Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment as one of the granddads that's here. I've been in Landcare for a long, long time. Just with our group, we discovered that I chair the Mid-Murray Landcare Network, and we discovered that over the time our most successful meetings have been involving the whole families. Just recently we hosted a night where we called it a Frogs and Reptiles night, but we had something different. We cooked pizzas for everyone that turned up. We've had many night walks with the kids with torches going around looking for the spotted owl or whatever it might be. We've had walks through the forest with some guys from the Wirramina Environment Centre going around. His greatest joy was picking up a scat, identifying that and showing the little kids and telling the history of that. So those things involve the whole family. It's not just the aged or the youngest. There's everyone there, and I think that's very conducive to good relationships.
That's where a lot of when we come into engaging the 30-somethings, a lot of what I'm hearing is, they've got young kids, and they're exactly those sorts of activities that you come on, because you get the 30-something-year-old mum and dad with the little kids coming along as well, which is that shift in just understanding. But yeah, they're great events. We do night stalks as well. Fun.
And because we've got so many committees to go to, 1.5 meetings a week, it means you're away from your family. So if you can take the family to the meeting, there you go. You might not need to reduce the number of groups.